There is a silent battle many people are fighting, a battle that has nothing to do with money, status, or opportunity, but everything to do with how they see themselves. It is the battle of value. Because the way you see your worth will determine the way you live your life. If you think you are ordinary, you will accept ordinary. If you think you are replaceable, you will live like an option. If you think you are limited, you will never step beyond boundaries that were never meant to hold you. And the tragedy is not that people lack value. The tragedy is that they live without recognizing it. But what if everything you believed about your worth has been shaped by the wrong voices? What if the opinions that lowered your confidence were never qualified to define you in the first place? Because there is a dangerous habit many people have developed. They allow temporary experiences to define permanent identity. One rejection makes them feel worthless. One failure makes them feel incapable. One opinion makes them question everything about themselves. But hear this clearly. Your value is not fragile. It cannot be reduced by rejection. It cannot be erased by failure. It cannot be defined by people. Because your value did not originate in the hands of man. It was established by God. And anything established by God carries a level of authority that human opinion cannot cancel. But here is the challenge. If you do not know your value, you will constantly seek it. You will chase validation in places that cannot sustain you. You will settle for less because you think less is all you deserve. You will remain in environments that drain you because you are afraid to stand alone. And slowly, without realizing it, you will begin to live beneath the level you were created for. But tonight, something must shift, because you are not here to live a life of confusion about your identity. You are not here to negotiate your worth with people who cannot see it. You are not here to shrink yourself just to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold you. There is something inside of you that carries weight, purpose, and significance far beyond what you have experienced so far. And until you understand that, you will continue to live below your potential. But once you see it, once you truly understand what God has placed inside you, everything begins to shift, your standards rise, your decisions become intentional. You stop chasing acceptance and start walking in authority. You stop asking for permission and start living in purpose. And you begin to realize something powerful. You were never created to be common. We're designed to carry something rare, something valuable, something that cannot be easily replaced. And when God raises your value, He does not just change how others see you. He transforms how you see yourself. But that transformation comes with a process. It will challenge your thinking. It will stretch your mindset. It will separate you from what you thought you needed. And if you are not careful, you will misinterpret the very process that is meant to elevate you. So do not rush this moment. Do not allow distraction to steal what is about to be revealed to you. Because what you are about to understand will not just inspire you, it will confront you. It will challenge every false belief you have accepted about yourself, and it will replace it with truth that has the power to change your entire life. The question is not whether you have value. The question is, are you living according to it? And as we go deeper, you will begin to see clearly. You are not who people said you are. You are not what your past tried to make you. You are not limited by what you have experienced. You are who God says you are. And once that truth becomes real to you, everything in your life will begin to align with it. So stay focused, because your perception is about to shift. And when your perception changes, your life will follow. Your value is one of the most important truths you will ever understand, yet is also one of the most attacked and misunderstood areas of your life. Because if the enemy can confuse your sense of worth, he can control your decisions, your standards, your relationships, and ultimately your destiny. And the primary way this confusion happens is when you allow people to become the source of your value, instead of recognizing that your value has already been declared by God. You were never designed to be evaluated by human opinion. People are inconsistent. Their perceptions change. Their approval is unstable. One moment they celebrate you, the next moment they ignore you. One season they accept you, the next season they reject you. If you build your identity on something that's unstable, your life will always feel uncertain. That is why any value that comes from people is temporary. But when God declares something, it is permanent. Before you were born, before you achieved anything, before you proved anything, before anyone had the chance to accept or reject you, God had already established your worth. That means your value is not something you earn. It is something you carry. And what you carry is not based on performance. It is based on design. You were designed intentionally, not randomly. You were created with purpose, not by accident. That means there is something inside of you that carries significance beyond what people can see on the surface. But here is the danger. If you do not know your value, you will spend your life trying to prove it. You will seek validation from people who were never qualified to define you. You will adjust your behavior to gain acceptance. You will lower your standards just to fit in. You will tolerate environments that do not respect you. And all of this happens because you are trying to get from people what has already been given by God. Approval is not a substitute for identity. And many people are exhausted not because life is hard, but because they are constantly performing for acceptance. They are trying to impress people who cannot even see their true worth. But when you understand that your value is declared by God, everything changes. You stop performing and you start living. You stop chasing validation and you start walking in confidence. You stop adjusting your identity to fit into spaces, and you start choosing spaces that align with your identity. Because once you know your value, you no longer negotiate with what is beneath you. You see, declaration is powerful. When God declares something, it is not a suggestion, it is a fact. And God has already declared your worth by the very act of creating you. You are not here by mistake. You are not here with purpose. You are not here without significance. You are here because God saw value in your existence. And that value is not dependent on whether people recognize it, because recognition does not create value. It reveals it. A diamond remains valuable even if no one sees it. Its worth is not based on visibility, but on its nature. In the same way, your value does not decrease just because someone fails to recognize it. Their blindness does not change your worth. But if you do not understand this, you will begin to internalize other people's opinions as truth. When they reject you, you will feel worthless. When they ignore you, you will feel invisible. When they criticize you, you will feel inadequate. And slowly, you will begin to build your identity on their reactions instead of God's declaration. That is a dangerous place to live, because people will always have opinions, but God has already made a decision, and his decision is final. You are valuable not because of what you have done, but because of what he has placed inside you, not because of how people treat you, but because of how he created you, not because of your past, but because of your purpose. And once you fully understand this, your mindset begins to shift. You stop asking, do they see my worth? And you start asking, am I living according to my worth? Because the real issue is not whether people recognize you. The real issue is whether you recognize yourself. Self-awareness changes everything. When you know your value, you become selective, you become disciplined, you become intentional. You no longer allow access to people who do not respect your worth. You no longer stay in environments that diminish your identity. You no longer accept treatment that contradicts what God has declared about you, because you understand something powerful. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate, and tolerance is directly connected to your sense of value. If you think you are worth little, you will accept little. If you think you are common, you will live commonly. If you think you are replaceable, you will allow yourself to be treated as an option. But when you understand that your value is declared by God, your standards rise, your expectations rise, your decisions rise, because you begin to align your life with the truth of who you are. And this alignment requires courage, because not everyone will understand your standards. Not everyone will agree with your boundaries. Not everyone will accept the new version of you that refuses to settle. But that is the cost of living in truth. You cannot live according to God's declaration and still seek human approval. At some point, you must choose. Will you live by what God has said, or will you live by what people think? Because you cannot fully embrace both. One will always contradict the other. And if you choose people, you will constantly adjust, constantly compromise, constantly feel incomplete. But if you choose God, you will stand firm, walk confidently, and live with clarity, because his declaration does not change. So even when people doubt you, you remain grounded. Even when people reject you, you remain secure. Even when people misunderstand you, you remain focused, because your identity is not in their hands. It is in God's word. And what God has declared cannot be undone by human opinion. So stop trying to earn what has already been given. Stop chasing what has already been established. Stop proving what does not need proof. You're already valuable. The question is, will you believe it? Because the moment you truly accept what God has declared about you, your life will begin to reflect it. You will think differently. You will act differently. You will choose differently. And most importantly, you will live differently, not based on what people say, but based on what God has already decided. One of the greatest misconceptions in this generation is the belief that value is proven by visibility. People assume that the more they are seen, the more they are worth. They chase attention, recognition, applause, and public validation as if these things have the power to increase their significance. But popularity is not proof of value. It is only proof of exposure. And exposure without preparation is dangerous. Because if you are elevated publicly without being developed privately, the very attention you desire can become the pressure that destroys you. God does not measure your worth by how many people know your name. He measures it by how prepared you are to carry what He has placed inside you. That is why He focuses on process, not popularity. Because process builds substance, while popularity only builds image. An image cannot sustain purpose. Many people want to be seen, but they are not ready to be responsible. They want influence, but they have not developed discipline. They want recognition, but they have not refined their character. And this is why God will often hide you before He reveals you. Because what He is doing in you is more important than what people see from you. Process is where real value is developed. It is where your mindset is shaped, your character is tested, your discipline is built, and your identity is solidified. And none of these things happen in public. They happen in private, in seasons that feel slow, unnoticed, and sometimes even frustrating. But those hidden seasons are not empty, they are intentional. Because God is not preparing you for attention, He is preparing you for responsibility. And responsibility requires depth, it requires stability, it requires maturity. These are not things that can be developed through popularity. They can only be developed through process. That is why process often feels uncomfortable. It stretches you beyond your current limits. It forces you to confront your weaknesses. It demands consistency when there is no applause. It requires discipline when no one is watching. And in those moments, you have to decide whether you are committed to becoming or just being seen. Because becoming requires patience. It requires endurance. It requires a willingness to grow even when growth is slow and unseen. And this is where many people fail. They abandon the process because they do not see immediate results. They compare themselves to others who appear to be ahead. They feel overlooked, forgotten, and undervalued. But what they fail to realize is that God is not ignoring them. He is investing in them. Because the longer the process, the stronger the foundation. And the stronger the foundation, the greater the capacity. God is not trying to impress people with your life. He is trying to establish something in you that can sustain purpose long term. Because success without foundation is temporary. It may look impressive for a moment, but it cannot endure pressure. That is why God values process over popularity. Because process produces substance, and substance produces stability. And stability is what sustains greatness. When your worth is increased through process, it is not dependent on external validation. It is rooted in internal transformation. You do not need people to affirm you because you have been refined by experience. You do not need constant recognition because your confidence comes from growth, not applause. And when God finally brings you into visibility, you are not overwhelmed by it, you are prepared for it. Because you have been built in private, you have been strengthened in silence, you have been developed in places where no one saw your progress but God. And that kind of development cannot be shaken by public pressure. So do not be discouraged by seasons where you feel unseen. Do not measure your value by how much attention you receive. Because God is not increasing your worth through exposure. He is increasing it through preparation. And preparation always requires time. It requires patience. It requires trust. But when the process is complete, what God reveals will carry weight, depth, and endurance. Because it was not built on popularity. It was built on purpose. Rejection is one of the most painful experiences a person can go through because it strikes directly at your sense of identity. It makes you question your worth, your place, and your significance. It creates a feeling of being unwanted, unrecognized, and misunderstood. And because of that, many people interpret rejection as a sign that something is wrong with them. But what if rejection is not an indication of your lack, but a revelation of your level? What if the very reason you were rejected is because what you carry does not belong in that environment? Because not every space has the capacity to recognize or sustain high value. Some environments are too limited, too shallow, too unprepared to handle what you bring. And when something valuable enters a place that cannot understand it, rejection becomes the natural response. Not because the value is absent, but because the environment is incompatible. You see, value must be aligned with environment. A diamond placed in a setting that cannot appreciate it will be treated like a stone. Not because it has lost its worth, but because it is in the wrong place. And many people spend their lives trying to prove their value in environments that were never designed to recognize them. They lower themselves, adjust themselves, and compromise themselves just to fit in. But in doing so, they diminish the very thing that makes them valuable. Because value is not meant to be forced into acceptance. It is meant to be placed where it is recognized. That is why rejection can be a form of redirection. It is God removing you from spaces that would have limited your growth, suppressed your identity, and undervalued your potential. But this requires a shift in perspective. Because if you see rejection as failure, you will chase acceptance. But if you see rejection as protection, you will seek alignment. And alignment is what positions you for purpose. Because when you are in the right environment, you do not have to fight to be seen. You do not have to struggle to be understood. You do not have to prove your worth constantly. Your value is evident. Your presence is appreciated. Your contribution is recognized. But before you reach that place, you may go through seasons of rejection. And those seasons are not there to break you. They are there to build your awareness. They teach you what does not align with you. They show you where you do not belong. They refine your standards. Because every time you are rejected, you are being pushed closer to where you are meant to be. But if you misunderstand rejection, you will remain stuck trying to return to places that have already released you. You will keep knocking on doors that have already been closed. You will keep seeking approval from people who have already decided not to recognize you. And in doing so, you delay your progress because you are trying to force acceptance where there is no alignment. But when you understand that your value is high, your mindset changes. You stop chasing environments, you start choosing them. You become selective, you become intentional, you become aware that not every place deserves your presence, and that awareness protects you. Because when you know your value, you do not fight to stay where you are not valued. You walk away with confidence, knowing that your worth is not determined by rejection. It is simply being redirected to the right environment. So do not allow rejection to lower your perception of yourself. Allow it to elevate your understanding, because sometimes the reason you are not accepted is not because you are not enough. It is because you are too much for where you were. And what is too much for the wrong place is exactly what is needed in the right one. There is something inside of you that most people will never fully understand, not because it is not real, but because it is rare. And anything that is rare is not easily recognized by common perception. That is why one of the greatest struggles you will face in life is not discovering your value, but accepting the reality that what God placed inside you is beyond the capacity of many people to comprehend. You must understand this clearly. Rarity and recognition do not always appear together. Just because something is valuable does not mean it will be immediately appreciated. In fact, the more rare something is, the fewer people are qualified to recognize it. That is why you cannot measure your worth by the reactions of people who lack the awareness to see what you carry, because people can only recognize what they understand. And if what is inside you operates at a level beyond their understanding, they will misinterpret it, overlook it, or even reject it, not because it lacks value, but because it exceeds their perception. This is where many people make a critical mistake. They assume that lack of recognition means lack of worth. They begin to question themselves. They begin to shrink themselves. They begin to adjust their identity to fit into spaces that can only handle something smaller, something more familiar, something less demanding. But the moment you reduce yourself to be understood by everyone, you have already stepped out of alignment with what God placed inside you. Because what God places inside you is not designed to be common. It is designed to be significant. And significance always carries a level of separation. You cannot carry something rare and still expect to be treated as ordinary. It does not work that way. Anything rare requires a different level of handling, a different level of understanding, and a different level of positioning. And if it is placed in the wrong environment, it will not be recognized for what it truly is. Think about it. If you place something extraordinary in an environment that only understands the ordinary, it will be treated as if it has no difference, not because the value is absent, but because the perception is limited. And this is exactly what happens to many people. They are carrying purpose, vision, creativity, and potential that is far beyond their current environment. But instead of recognizing the mismatch, they internalize the misunderstanding. They begin to think they are the problem, but the problem is not your value. It is your environment, because value must be aligned with recognition, and recognition requires capacity. Not everyone has the capacity to see what you carry. Not everyone has the awareness to understand your depth. Not everyone has the maturity to handle your level. And once you understand this, it will free you from the pressure of trying to be understood by everyone. Because you were never designed to be understood by everyone. You were designed to be effective in the right place. This is why you must stop chasing validation from the wrong people. Because validation from those who cannot recognize your value is meaningless. It does not add to you, and it does not define you. It only distracts you from becoming who you are meant to be. Instead of seeking recognition, you must focus on alignment. Because when you are aligned with the right environment, your value does not have to be explained. It is evident, it is felt, it is needed, it is respected. But before you reach that place, you must go through a phase where you are misunderstood, a phase where people overlook you, a phase where your value is hidden. And this phase is not a punishment. It is a preparation, because during this time, God is not only developing what is inside you, but He is also protecting it, because not everyone deserves access to what you carry. Not everyone is equipped to handle it. And if it is exposed too early, it can be misused, misinterpreted, or even destroyed. So God allows seasons where your value is not fully recognized, not because it is not there, but because it is not yet time for it to be revealed. And this requires patience, because it is difficult to carry something great and not be acknowledged for it. It is difficult to know you have more to offer, but not have the opportunity to express it fully. It is difficult to feel unseen when you know there's something significant inside of you. But this is where maturity is developed, because maturity allows you to remain confident in your value even when it is not recognized. It allows you to stay focused on your growth even when there is no applause. It allows you to continue building, refining, and developing what God has placed inside you, regardless of who sees it, because you understand something powerful. Recognition is not what creates value. God already did that. And when God decides to reveal what He has placed inside you, no one will be able to ignore it, because true value cannot remain hidden forever. It will eventually find its environment. It will eventually find its platform. It will eventually find its place. But until then, you must protect it. You must nurture it. You must develop it, because what you carry is not common. It is not ordinary. It is not replaceable. It is rare. And rarity requires responsibility. You cannot treat something rare casually. You cannot expose it carelessly. You cannot place it in environments that do not respect it, because if you do, you will compromise its integrity. So you must become disciplined. You must become selective. You must become intentional about where you invest your time, your energy, and your presence, because when you understand the rarity of what God has placed inside you, you begin to live differently. You stop settling for less. You stop accepting what does not align. You stop allowing access to those who do not appreciate your worth, because you realize that your value is not something to be negotiated. It is something to be protected. And once you reach that level of understanding, everything begins to change. Your confidence increases, your standards rise, your decisions become clearer. Because you are no longer trying to fit into places that cannot handle you. You are preparing for places that require you. And that is the shift from being tolerated to being needed, from being overlooked to being essential, from being misunderstood to being recognized. But all of this begins with one realization. What God placed inside you is rare, and rarity is not meant to be everywhere. It is meant to be in the right place, at the right time, with the right people. So do not be discouraged if everyone does not understand you. Do not be frustrated if your value is not immediately recognized. Do not be tempted to lower yourself just to be accepted, because acceptance in the wrong place is more dangerous than rejection. Stay aligned. Stay focused. Stay committed to developing what God has placed inside you, because when the time comes and the environment is right and the alignment is complete, what is inside you will not only be recognized, it will be required. And when that happens, you will understand why it had to remain rare. There comes a defining moment in every person's life where they must choose between comfort and calling, between acceptance and alignment, between what is easy and what is right. And that moment determines whether you will live according to your true value or remain trapped in a version of yourself that was never meant to exist. Because your value is not proven when everything is convenient. It is revealed when you have the courage to refuse what is beneath you. Most people do not live below their potential because they lack ability. They live below it because they lack the discipline to say no. They accept less, tolerate less, and settle for less, not because that is all they deserve, but because it is all they are willing to demand from life. And the moment you begin to settle, you begin to shrink. You reduce your standards, you compromise your identity, you adjust your expectations, and slowly you drift away from the level God designed for you to live on. But calling does not adjust to your comfort. Your life must rise to meet your calling, and rising requires refusal. You must refuse relationships that drain you instead of developing you. You must refuse environments that limit you instead of stretching you. You must refuse opportunities that distract you instead of aligning with your purpose. Because every yes to something beneath you is a no to something greater waiting for you. And many people are frustrated not because they lack opportunity, but because they are occupied with what is not aligned. They are too busy maintaining what they should have released. They are too committed to what they should have walked away from. And as a result, they never step into the fullness of who they are meant to be. But when you understand your calling, your decisions change. You no longer make choices based on convenience, you make them based on alignment. You no longer ask, is this available? You ask, is this appropriate for who I am becoming? Because your calling demands a higher standard of living. It demands discipline, focus, and intentionality. It requires you to walk away from things that feel good but lead nowhere. It requires you to let go of what is familiar in order to step into what is necessary. And this is not easy, because settling is comfortable. It allows you to avoid risk. It allows you to stay where you are understood. It allows you to remain in environments where expectations are low. But comfort is the enemy of calling, because your calling will always require growth, and growth will always require change. And change will always require you to leave something behind. That is why refusing to settle is not just a decision. It is a discipline. It is something you must practice daily. You must constantly evaluate your life and ask yourself whether what you are accepting aligns with what God has called you to become. Because if it does not, it must be released. Not because it is bad, but because it is beneath your level. And this is where many people struggle. They think that everything they walk away from must be negative. But that is not true. Sometimes what you leave behind is good, but it is not right for you. And staying in what is good can keep you from what is great. So you must develop the ability to discern the difference between what is acceptable and what is aligned. Because your true value is not revealed by what you tolerate, it is revealed by what you reject. It is revealed when you walk away from opportunities that compromise your purpose. It is revealed when you choose discipline over distraction. It is revealed when you stand firm in your standards, even when it costs you comfort, relationships, or immediate rewards. Because every time you refuse to settle, you are reinforcing your identity. You are reminding yourself that you were not created for average, not designed for mediocrity, not called to live below your potential. And that awareness changes everything. It elevates your thinking. It sharpens your focus. It strengthens your discipline, because you are no longer living based on what is available. You are living based on what is appropriate for your calling. And when you reach that level of clarity, your life begins to align with your value. Doors that do not fit you close, opportunities that match your level appear, connections that support your growth emerge, because you have positioned yourself correctly, not by chasing, but by choosing. And it all begins with one decision: refusing to settle. Because the moment you stop accepting less is the moment you start stepping into more. And that is where your true value is revealed, not in what you gain, but in what you refuse to accept. One of the clearest signs that your value is increasing is not always addition. It is often separation. And this is where many people become confused, frustrated, and even discouraged, because they expect growth to feel like gain. But in reality, growth often feels like loss. People leave, doors close, opportunities disappear, environments change. And if you do not understand what is happening, you will interpret separation as rejection instead of recognizing it as protection. Because when God raises your value, He must also adjust your environment. He must remove you from anything that cannot sustain the level you are stepping into. Because not everything that was acceptable at one level is sustainable at the next. What once supported you may now limit you. What once felt comfortable may now feel restrictive. What once seemed right may now feel out of place. And this shift is not accidental, it is intentional. Because elevation requires alignment. You cannot carry greater value and remain in environments that were designed for a lower level. It will create tension. It will create discomfort. It will create a constant sense of misalignment. And that discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something has changed. You have grown. You have developed. You have evolved. And now your environment must reflect that growth. But here is the challenge. Separation is painful. It forces you to let go of what is familiar. It requires you to release people, places, and patterns that you have become comfortable with. And comfort is difficult to leave, even when it is no longer beneficial. Because comfort creates a false sense of security. It makes you feel safe even when you are no longer growing. But growth and comfort cannot coexist at the same level. So when God raises your value, He disrupts your comfort to establish your alignment. He begins to remove what cannot go with you into your next season. Not because those things are bad, but because they are no longer compatible with who you are becoming. And compatibility is essential for sustainability. Because if something cannot sustain your level, it will eventually drain you, it will limit you, it will hold you back. So separation is not punishment, it is preservation. It is God protecting your value by removing you from environments that would diminish it. But you must cooperate with this process, because if you resist separation, you delay alignment. You hold on to what God is trying to remove. You fight to stay where you no longer belong. And in doing so, you create unnecessary struggle in your life. But when you understand that separation is part of elevation, your perspective changes. You stop clinging to what is leaving. You stop forcing what is falling apart. You stop chasing what is no longer aligned. because you realize that what is leaving your life is not being taken from you. It is being cleared to make room for what is coming. And what is coming will match your value. It will support your growth. It will align with your purpose. But it cannot enter until what does not fit is removed. That is why you must trust the process of separation. Even when it does not make sense, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it seems like loss. Because what you are losing is not meant to sustain you at your next level, and holding on to it will only limit your progress. So you must be willing to release it, to let it go without resistance, to move forward without looking back. Because your future cannot be built on what belongs to your past. And when you fully embrace this, you begin to walk with a different mindset. You become less attached to temporary things and more committed to eternal purpose. You stop fearing loss and start trusting alignment. You stop questioning what is leaving and start preparing for what is coming. Because you understand that when God raises your value, everything in your life must adjust to match it. And that adjustment always begins with separation. Not to harm you, but to position you. Not to take from you, but to prepare you. Not to break you, but to build you into someone who can sustain the level you are stepping into. And when the process is complete, you will realize that what you once saw as loss was actually one of the greatest protections you ever received. As we come to the end of this message, you are now standing at a defining point. A point where information must become transformation. Where what you have heard must now shape how you live. Because understanding your value is not just a motivational idea. It is a responsibility. It demands that you think differently, choose differently, and live differently. You have heard a truth that challenges everything the world tries to teach you. The world says your value is based on popularity, performance, and approval. But what you have discovered tonight is far greater. Your value is declared by God, developed through process, protected through separation, and revealed when you refuse to settle. This is not ordinary knowledge. This is a shift in identity, because the moment you truly understand your value, you can no longer live casually. You can no longer tolerate what diminishes you. You can no longer accept what contradicts who you are becoming. Your life must align with what you now know, because knowledge without alignment creates frustration. You cannot know your worth and continue to live beneath it without feeling the tension. That tension is not there to disturb you. It is there to push you into transformation. You are no longer unaware. You now know that your value does not come from people. So why seek validation from those who did not create you? You now know that your worth is developed through process. So why rush a journey that is designed to build you? You now know that rejection is often redirection. So why chase what has already been removed from your life? And most importantly, you now know that what God has placed inside you is rare. So why treat it as common? These are the questions that will define your next season, because from this moment forward, your decisions will reveal whether you truly believe what you have heard. Will you continue to settle, or will you rise? Will you continue to doubt, or will you stand firm? Will you continue to seek approval, or will you walk in authority? Because understanding your value is not proven by your words. It is proven by your choices. Every decision you make is a reflection of what you believe about yourself. If you believe you are valuable, you will protect your time. If you believe you are valuable, you will guard your energy. If you believe you are valuable, you will walk away from what does not align. But if you still question your worth, you will compromise. You will tolerate. You will remain in places that were never meant to hold you, so the responsibility is clear. You must align your life with your value. This means becoming disciplined. It means becoming selective. It means becoming intentional about everything you allow into your life. Because when God raises your value, you cannot continue living the same way. Old habits must go. Old mindsets must change. Old environments must be left behind. Not because they are bad, but because they are beneath the level you are stepping into. And this is where courage is required, because elevation is not comfortable. It will require you to walk alone at times. It will require you to say no when others say yes. It will require you to trust God when everything around you feels uncertain. But understand this: what you are stepping into is greater than what you are leaving behind. Because when you align with your value, your life begins to reflect it. Opportunities change. Connections change. Environments change, because you are no longer positioned for average. You are positioned for purpose. And purpose attracts what matches it. So do not fear the changes that are coming. Do not resist the process you are in. Do not question the separation you are experiencing, because everything is working together to position you correctly, to align you completely, to prepare you fully. And when that alignment is complete, you will begin to see your life differently. You will no longer chase, you will attract, you will no longer force, you will flow, you will no longer doubt, you will stand in confidence because you are no longer trying to become valuable. You have accepted that you already are. And that acceptance is what transforms everything. So walk boldly, think higher, live intentionally, and never again reduce yourself to fit into places that cannot recognize your worth, because you are not ordinary, you are not common, you are not replaceable. You are valuable because God made you that way, and when you fully live in that truth, your life will reflect a level of clarity, confidence, and purpose that cannot be ignored. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And most importantly, thank you for allowing this truth to enter your mind and challenge your perspective. May you walk forward with confidence. May you stand firm in your identity. And may you never again question what God has already declared about you. Thank you.